Bonjour, this is Fabulously Delicious, the French food podcast. This is the podcast that's all about the cuisine that is said to have founded modern cooking. French ingredients and dishes have been the starting block for many of the world's best chefs and cooks. And on Fabulously Delicious, you'll learn all about those dishes and ingredients, as well as get to know more about fabulous French foodies. I'm your host, Andrew Pryor. Enchanté.
Enchanté.
My life changed when I competed on MasterChef Australia. Now, I'm living my best life right here in the French countryside. Cooking, eating, meeting wonderful locals, food producers, chefs, home cooks, drinking amazing wines, eating some of the would you believe there's more than 1,500 French cheeses? Yum! I'm trying to eat them all for you. And of course, I'm also trying to share these fabulous experiences with you, my fabulously delicious audience. So I hope you're enjoying them. Today is the late Édouard Nignon's birthday, and so I thought we'd celebrate this amazing French chef's birthday by revisiting his episode that I did on him in the Story Of series. So if you haven't heard it before, you will now, and if you have heard it, you'll get a revisit, and you may learn something that you didn't from the previous episode. But most of all, I hope you love hearing about a fabulous French chef. Sit back, turn up the volume. If you're not driving, pour yourself a glass of wine, break a baguette, add a bit of saucisson maybe, and some delicious cheese, and enjoy today's episode of Fabulously Delicious, the story of Édouard Nignon. Édouard Nignon was born on Thursday the 9th of November 1865 at number 2 Rue Faber in Nantes. He was the sixth of 8 children. His father, Pierre Nignon, was a labourer, and his mother, Anne, a seamstress. Like so many young children at the time, at the age of 9, Edouard started his working life, his as an apprenticeship in the kitchen at Cambron restaurant. A year later, he joined Monnier restaurant. This is where he learned to read and write. This restaurant was also where he first would start work in the kitchen. He told a friend and future colleague, Daniel Mortet, about that time. He said, "I will not take long to love, with all the ardour of my youthful faith, my beautiful profession, and I firmly resolved to serve it at its best that I could." The teenager felt that his vocation revealed himself, strengthened himself, and that his path was traced, which he would not follow without failure. Edouard went on to work in restaurants in Angers and Cholet before moving on to Paris at the age of just 15 years old. In Paris, he worked with some of the great chefs at the time and became an assistant to the saucier, who, at that time in the kitchen, was the most important chef. He would start as a help saucier at Bignon, the chef saucier at Poisson, the chef entremetteur at the 1889 World Exposition, the chef rôtissier at La Pérouse, and the chef de cuisine at Marveillot. This time in Paris is said to have influenced his later working life in Russia. In Paris, he would work at renowned houses, then in turn cook for the visiting Russian Tsar. And then in 1896 at the French embassy, he would cook for the Tsar on an official visit. During this work in Paris, he has said about his time, "I acquired extensive experience in my art, but, eager to acquire more, I practiced successfully at the Maison Dorée, the Café Anglais, the Temple of l'Écluse, the Café Voisin, the Bignon restaurant, and with my eminent compatriot Le Tourte, the greatest cook I have known in my career, at the Magny restaurant, where I saw so many celebrities parade." Sunday, the 16th of September in 1888, Edouard would marry Josephine Lucas, who was a cook. A year later, they would have a son, Marcel Edouard. 1892 saw Edouard and his family move to Austria, where he cooked for Franz Joseph I, who was the Emperor of Austria. Edouard is credited with inventing the bouchelet tournagelle, a veal kidney and rice stew inspired by the Austrian Borscht stew. Edouard loved unusual taste combinations. He'd like to pair oysters with camembert, or he had a dish, the homard à la dinornaise, which is a lobster salad with truffles, mustard and pickles. This was called the Insane Trio. His time in Austria saw him work at the Trianon, a popular restaurant in the Austrian capital Vienna. Edouard would meet all kinds of foreign cooks and chefs during his travels and work, and this would help him to open his horizons to other cuisines, not just French cuisine. In 1897, Edouard left for London to open a restaurant at the famed London hotel Claridge's. At Claridge's, he was hired as the master chef. At the time, Claridge's was named the most beautiful hotel in the world. It would attract the elite of London society and high society from around the world. Getting a name for himself in the kitchen, Edouard would become available to the who's who to be rented out as a cook at their princely houses for amazing banquets. He would cook at places like Chateau de Chantilly for the Duke of Orléans, and also in Paris for a banquet for the Duke of Compossy. He would at this time, like the famed Antoine Carême, become known as the Cook of the Kings. In 1896, sadly, Josephine, his wife, died, leaving Edouard a widow and a single father. At the turn of the century, Edouard and Marcel would move to Russia. He would work at the Hermitage restaurant in Moscow. He was chosen from 5 other chefs for the role. During the evening, he would cook for high dignitaries and the extremely wealthy Russian lords, who were all great lovers of French cuisine. On Thursday, the 22nd of August in 1901, Edouard, at the General Consulate of France and then afterwards at the Church of St. Louis in Moscow, would marry his second wife, Marie Antoinette Simon. Edouard worked at the Grand Hotel Metropole in Moscow from 1905. He cooked for the Emperor Nicholas II of Russia. During this time, Edouard and Marie Antoinette would have a daughter, Berthe Marie. In this time in Russia, Edouard would create a French bakery, the first in Russia. Having survived revolutions, world wars, as far as I can see, it still exists today, and the last owner of it was a Frenchman. The Grand Hotel Metropole dining room in Moscow had 105 tables. The beginning of the revolution would see workers in the kitchen going on strike, and then further issues around this time would see Edouard less comfortable with his young family being in Russia. At the time, he said that he almost perished under the bullets of a Cossack. The sudden intervention of one of his employees shouting at the soldier, "Don't shoot, he's a brother," had saved his life. This time in Russia was marred by the death of his daughter Berthe Marie at the age of just 6. So in 1908, Edouard left for Paris for the opening of the Majestic Hotel, which is now the Peninsula Hotel on Avenue Kléber. He then bought La Rue restaurant in Paris off of the Count de Uzès. The restaurant was opened in 1886 opposite Church de Madeleine on the corner of Place de Madeleine and Rue Royale. The clientele for his first restaurant on his own would be the who's who of society, kings and queens of Europe, Russian royalty, writers like Marcel Proust, Anatole France, and Edmond Rostand. On Monday the 21st of June, 1909, Edouard would be awarded the Knight of the Order of Agriculture for his work at creating culinary exhibitions, which he'd done since opening La Rue. Merci for tuning in, fabulous foodies. If this episode of Fabulously Delicious hit the spot and you love our French food adventures, then please take a moment to rate and review the podcast wherever you're listening. Your feedback helps us reach more listeners who love French cuisine, just like you do. You're helping keep the magic of Fabulously Delicious alive. Join me for a delightful cooking adventure right here in Memorial. You'll stay in our charming little townhouse in the heart of the town, and then it's time to roll up your sleeves and come cook with me here in my home kitchen. Enjoy an authentic French food experience that will tantalize your taste buds and create lasting memories. Ready to savor the flavors of France? Then check out andrewbrierfabulously.com for more information on my Big End residencies. I can't wait to welcome you.
During World War I, everything would change. Life would forever be different, from his experiences at the restaurant and cooking to his personal life. In France, people saw that holidays were abolished, money was scarce, so the restaurant business would be very slow and very different. Edouard was to cook for US President Wilson during his 2 stays in Paris. Sadly though, on Thursday the 8th of October 1941, Marcel, his son, who was just 25 years old, was part of the 160th Infantry Regiment, and he would be killed at the fight of Boissel-in-Somme. Edouard started during the First World War to write cookbooks. His first was L'Heptameron de Gourmet ou Les délices de la cuisine française, which translates to The 7 Days of Gourmets or The Delights of French Cuisine. This was released in 1919. The book would be dedicated to his late son Marcel. On Saturday the 8th of January in 1921, Edouard was appointed the Knight of the Legion of Honor by decree of the Ministry of the Interior. This was for, amongst other things, his distinguished services rendered during the war to charities, and in particular as the founder of an orphanage for the war orphans of his restaurant. Édouard Nignon also participated in the financing of a Parisian retirement home, more particularly for retired chefs. Sometime in 1921, he would stop work in the restaurant for health reasons. He would undergo a very risky operation at the time to remove a kidney. In 1924, he released Ouest Éclair, The West Eclair, which was later reissued in 1928. His third book, the title is very long, so bear with me. It is Le plaisir de la table, où sous une forme nouvelle, l'auteur a dévoilé mon délicieux secret et recettes de bonne cuisine, transcrit le précieux avis de gourmets fameux et de fins gastronomes, conseillers aimables et sous un l'art de bien manger. Well, translated, that means the pleasures of the table, where the author uses a new form to reveal many delicious secrets and recipes of fine cuisine, transcribing precious advice of famous gourmets and fine gastronomes, kind and confident counselors of the art of fine dining. Wow, what a magnificent title for a book. It was released in 1926. Finally, in 1928, Edouard retired. In 1933, Éloge de la cuisine française, Praise of French Cuisine, was published. It promoted deglazing with water, clear broths, and parsimonious seasoning, which means to use small amounts or use the leftovers in the cooking process. This had a preface by Sacha Guitry, who was a famous French actor and playwright as well as director. Michel Girard, who was one of the founders of Nouvelle Cuisine, said of Edouard, that he was a visionary chef who had a huge influence on French cooks like himself and Joël Robuchon. Edouard bought the Château de la Haute-Forêt in Brielle-sous-Montfort, near Rennes, a village where his son's name is written on the war memorial. Under the supervision of his nephew, Chef Célestin Duplat, La Rue, Edouard's restaurant, would be honoured with 3 Michelin stars and would keep them until the Second World War. On Tuesday the 30th of October 1934, in Brielle-sous-Montfort, in Brittany, Edouard died of a uremia attack, or kidney failure, at the age of 68 years old. He left behind his fortune, it is said, to his second in charge to reward him for his loyalty. In 2010, an original copy of Edouard's first book was sold for €16,000. Chef Yvonne Garnier founded a cooking school in Nantes named the Culinary Institute Édouard Nignon. In Nantes, there is a street even bearing Edouard's name. Some of the dishes attributed to Edouard are Célestines de foie gras Valmore, jambon de Luxelles with figs, and consommé aux jambes de bois, which would then become a famous dish by Paul Bocuse. Despite being known by many of the world's great chefs, to the everyday French food-loving public, Edouard Nignon and his life is little known. So I hope that this might change, even just a little bit by this episode. Nicolas de Rambardy, in his guide to the best restaurants in France, says about Edouard, "The great gentleman of modern cuisine was not Escoffier, but Édouard Nignon. Escoffier served the profession of a cook, not the culinary art. Fernand Poix was the continuation of Nignon's cuisine, which was of a root simplicity."
Planning a trip to Paris, or maybe you're one of those lucky ones that already live in Paris. Well, I was fortunate enough to call Paris home myself. And to be honest, I think I've eaten my way through Paris for you. So I decided that I wanted to bring all that delicious experience straight to you, my fabulously delicious audience. And because if you're tuning in, I'm guessing that you pretty much love French food, probably love Paris as well. That's why I wrote my first book, Paris, Fabulous Food Guide to the World's Most Delicious City. Inside, you'll find more than 379 hand-picked recommendations. In fact, I've been to every single one of them. From the best boulangeries, cozy cafes, indulgent chocolate shops, exceptional fromageries, and must-visit restaurants, more than 170 of them. I've even included food streets, gourmet kitchen supply stores, wine bars, and so much more. This is the 2024 edition with up-to-date recommendations, perfect for your next trip to Paris if you're lucky enough to live there. You can grab your copy on andrewpryorfabulously.com, where I even offer a signed and gift package version that's perfect for any present for a fabulous foodie or francophile. You can also get it on Amazon, and there's a Kindle version for instant access. Happy eating and bon voyage. Don't forget to get your copy of Paris, a Fabulous Food Guide to the World's Most Delicious City. If you're tuning in to Fabulously Delicious, I know you're a fan of France and its incredible cuisine. So why not take your love for French food to the next level? Follow me on Instagram at AndrewPryorFabulously for a daily dose of delicious inspiration, mouth-watering recipes, and behind-the-scenes peeks into life here in France. I'd love to hear from you, so slide into my DMs and share your thoughts on Fabulously Delicious and your favourite French dishes. Let's connect and celebrate the fabulous world of French food together. That's it for another episode of Fabulously Delicious, Season 4. Had you heard of Edouard Nignon before? It was great to revisit this fabulous story. What did you learn from today's episode? Let me know by contacting me via Instagram at AndrewPryorFabulously or via my email contact@andrewpryorfabulously.com. I love to chat with you all. We could just have a chat about French chefs if you want, and their history of France in food. I love talking to people, and especially about food and French food. Thank you for listening, and remember, you know what my motto is: whatever you do, do it fabulously. Merci beaucoup, and bon app.